Finally, you're here.
Welcome, beautiful soul, to the Frequency DJ podcast, a place where you can find the right guides for your spiritual journey. Welcome, beautiful listener. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's little old me, once again, by myself, and this time I wanted to talk about something kind of ironic for me because of my background. Ironic because of my background. So basically I want to talk about how prayer is actually something really tangible that you can use in order for you to not feel like you can't do anything in a time of complete and utter chaos that the world is experiencing right now. So And I'll explain that through science and quantum physics. And quantum physics, as soon as I heard about quantum physics and as soon as I kind of, I'm still very much a beginner when it comes to, the ins and outs, knowing about what quantum physics is all about, because it is very, it's full of math. It's full of very complicated scientific math, and, theories that, well, you need basically a decent scientific background to kind of really comprehend them properly and deeply. But the kind of surface knowledge that I have encountered, it actually just blew my mind when I first came across it. Because, well, I'll actually come back to that. But what I want to say is that it's really ironic that I'm talking about this topic because about prayer specifically, not quantum physics, but prayer. Because I grew up in a background which, I was engulfed, you could say, by religious dogma. And even as a really young child, before I could really dress myself properly, I was questioning these beliefs that my parents, wholeheartedly supported and preached about. And I would question them about the, specific topics that confused me because they didn't really make a lot of sense. And they would come back to me with, biblical passages, which just created more questions in my mind. It didn't really solve anything for me. So, and I always felt like I was very separate from this particular religion and these particular beliefs. It never felt real for me. It never felt true. It never felt right. It didn't resonate. And, so much so that at the age of 16, I got kicked out of the church for being gay. And that to me, the fact that I always knew that I was gay, even as a little girl, and knew that I couldn't tell my parents or couldn't tell anyone because I knew that I'd get, quote unquote, in trouble for that. But also knowing that that was me and that I couldn't be any other way. And that who was this, religion to tell me that I was wrong? Because in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was perfect, exactly the way that I was. And then after I was kicked out for the very thing that I knew was right with me, it definitely wasn't wrong. I denounced religion. I denounced all religion, and I denounced everything that had to do with religion. So that included prayer, and especially the fact that, we would pray before every meal, and we sat down for every meal. So it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We would pray before every meal. My dad would pray for us. He would pray out loud for the three of us, mum, dad, and me. And he was always like this, very much like, just say the minimal amount of stuff as quickly as possible so that I can fucking eat kind of guy, So thank you very much, God, for the food that you've put in front of us. Yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Amen. And then mum and I would say amen as well to kind of reinforce that, heartfelt supplication to our Lord. So growing up with all of this and then, being excluded by everyone in the religion for me being exactly who I was and not really doing anything wrong. Yeah, religion was just fucked for me. And I felt this way about religion. So it wasn't just prayer, it was the Bible. It was, like I said, anything to do with religion. And that happened for years. So, and it was probably only until about a year or a year and a half ago where I was living with a roommate at the time, and she had a copy of the King James Bible on the shelf. And I was like, why do you have that? Because she's not religious at all. Like, she's spiritual, but she wasn't religious. And she's like, it's actually a really interesting read. And I'm like, hey, what? Are you for real? So I remember in my, having to go to church and do Bible study and read the Bible because you had to, because it was part of, being part of this religion. I remember the Bible being so boring, and things that didn't make sense, and then different passages that would contradict each other, and, all this like fanciful stuff that was like, it's just out of this world kind of stuff that, wouldn't happen. So yeah, it really took me aback that she had a copy of this Bible. And then because, since, so a couple of years from now, since the whole COVID thing started, and I started to reassess my life, and then I started to meet certain people that were quite spiritually minded, and then I was introduced to frequency music and all that kind of side of things, and really delved into that. And it opened up my world, and it changed my perspective into one where I could actually see things like the Bible, things like prayer, as things that were actually really useful for reasons other than what I first thought they were used for. And even Albert Einstein, right? He was quoted in saying that science can only be created by those who are thoroughly imbued with the aspiration towards truth and understanding. This source of feeling, however, springs from the sphere of religion. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Now, this is from one of the greatest scientific minds in our history, in our recent history, saying this. And I would go as far to say that maybe we could change the word religion to spirituality, because for me, it still kind of irks me a little bit that the word religion, there's still, for me, from what I can see from an insider's perspective and also an outsider's perspective, from the religion I grew up in to the religions that I know of, for the most part, religions are full of dogma, and dogma for me is not, there's no open-mindedness in dogma. There is no open-heartedness in dogma. There is just, this is the way it is, and you cannot change my mind. I'm going to stay with this belief forevermore, unless God himself comes down from the heavens and tells me otherwise. And even then, if that happened, they'd probably freak out and thought they were having a schizophrenic attack. So their beliefs would never change. And also, in my personal opinion, of late, science has been turned into a religion, where people that say that, oh, science, there's no peer review on this, so that can't be true. There's no peer review on that, so that can't be true either. I'm not going to believe this until science tells me that that is fact. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not waiting around for anyone or anything to tell me what feels true for me. I use my intuition to feel my way around the world, my way around life, my day to day. That is what I do because I trust my intuition. And I know that my intuition is really powerful. Even science tells me that intuition is powerful. So, and I know that I have been, it's been interesting. In the past, I've had discussions on certain topics with people in the past about whatever. And I've told them my opinion because it's what I felt to be true at the time. And they're like, well, science doesn't tell us that. You're just making shit up. Shut up, basically. And years later, science comes in and goes, hey guys, this is a thing we've discovered. And lo and behold, Ruth was right all this time. Why? Because she fell into that particular topic. Why am I speaking in the third person? I don't know. Because I felt into that topic and I spoke from my intuition. I spoke from my heart. Because I'll tell you one thing that is science is actually telling us now, especially places like the Heart Math Institute, are telling us that the heart is so much more intelligent and is actually pulling way more strings than we ever realized in comparison to the brain. So I don't know if you haven't heard any of my podcasts before where I speak, openly and candidly about whatever topic I'm speaking about. You may not know that I go on tangents and I may or may not come back from those. So I'm not apologizing for that. It is who I am. I do get distracted. And that's okay. Maybe focus on, if it keeps you here, focus on the fact that I am completely 100% authentic in who I am and how I speak and how I make podcast episodes. Now, another reason, or I don't know if I've covered this already, but the reason I want to talk to you about prayer and back it up with some science is because the chaos that has been happening in the past 2 years. Maybe you don't have money to donate to anything. Maybe you can't go anywhere that needs help right now for you to be, on the ground actually helping people in need. But you can definitely pray, and it does work. According to quantum physics, it works. There are some scientists out there that will scoff at what I'm saying right now, but quantum physics is probably one of the most valid sciences because it has been verified and tested more than any other science. Now, Albert Einstein spoke about a spooky action at a distance. Now, what he was referring to and what has been demonstrated recently by physicists is called entanglement. And it proves that particles are connected in a way that we don't know how to explain yet, even when separated, so that when we're observing them or affecting one, it instantly affects the other. In other words, one particle of energy can and does influence another particle of energy located in any other place or time. So these two particles are connected. We don't yet know how, but they are. And if you're influencing one, that particle, it's like they're communicating with each other. Almost like twins, right? With twins, you could ask. They've done studies with twins as well, where you can ask a twin, a certain question, and then the other twin that hasn't heard that question, that's not around, will come up with the answer to a question that they don't even know that happened to the other, that was asked to the other twin. Kind of like that, but particles. Now, there's a Dr. Lawrence Lashan, who's a psychologist, and he actually spent 15 years working full-time on a project in psychosomatic medicine, which is an interdisciplinary medical field which explores the relationships among social, psychological, and behavioral factors on bodily processes and quality of life in humans and animals. And this Dr. Lawrence Lashan, he surveyed the literature and concluded that spiritual healing actually did exist. He got rid of all the reports that, could have been due to hysterical change, suggestion, bad experimental design, and poor memory, etc. But there was one article it was a blind study that really kind of stuck out. Dr. Larry Dosey reviewed a well-controlled study on the effects of prayer on patients admitted to a coronary care unit. So coronary being heart. Half of the 393 patients were prayed for by prayer groups, and the other half were not. Those who compiled the data did not know who had been prayed for. So they had home prayer groups which were given the names of patients to be prayed for and some info about their condition, but no instructions on how to pray for them, right? And neither the patients, doctors, or nurses knew which patients were being prayed for. What were these results? What happened? What do you think happened? So 192 prayed for patients were less likely to require antibiotics. So only 3 out of 16 required antibiotics, and less likely to develop pulmonary edema, which was 6 versus 18, than the 201 patients that were not prayed for. None of the prayer for patients required a mechanical airway versus the 12 not prayed for did require a mechanical airway. They actually did statistical tests on these results, and they found the differences were not likely to have occurred by chance. So I want to reiterate that these results occurred without either the patients or the evaluator knowing who was receiving prayer versus who was not, and without any of the prayers ever having met any of those for whom they prayed for. So when Dr. William Nolan, who's a known debunker of faith healing, reviewed this study, he acknowledged it as one of the few that would actually stand up to scrutiny, because other studies were possibly flawed. Doctors and staff knew which patients were being prayed for, skewing their judgments of patients' response, etc. But Dr. Dosey concluded about this study, so this was his study: if a new drug or surgical procedure had the same effect as prayer, it would almost certainly have been heralded as a new breakthrough. And Dr. Nolan, the faith healing debunker, he actually agreed. He said, maybe we doctors ought to be writing on our order sheets, pray 3 times a day. So this comes from a book called Come Apart for a While by Robert and Jane Ellsworth. And it's interesting, I actually know of a prayer group here in Perth, and it's a small group of very powerful spiritual people. They're kind of top of their modalities, so to speak, and they all come together once a week, and they have a list of people that are sick or dying, and they pray for them. And I personally know that the results that they have got from doing this thing once a week are just mind-blowing. The results are mind-blowing. People on literally death's door coming out of it and being healthy again. And it's got to make you think. Like, just because we don't know the exact science behind how this stuff works, it doesn't mean that it's, bullshit. It doesn't mean it's woo-woo stuff. Our lack of understanding, that's on us. It's not on the thing that's actually producing results. And I'm probably going to jump around a little bit here, but I also want to talk about how quantum physics tells us that we create our surroundings. It tells us that we create our lives by merely focusing on certain things, for the most part, on a subconscious level. So it's not on a conscious level. And we can control what we think about. So if we have been conditioned to fear the unknown, then we can, through the basis of repetition, reprogram our subconscious, and therefore what is created by our thoughts, conscious or otherwise. Things like trauma and PTSD is another category of conditioning, and you know, you're actually holding somatic energies in your that affect your physical bodies. But that can also be, you know, trauma can be integrated and therefore nullified if you know how to do it. And even, you know, double-blind studies where doctors and researchers and scientists use placebos, where they tell the patients that this particular pill is going to heal you. It's been known to heal others. So if you take this pill 3 times a day for 1 month, you'll be healed. And the very belief in these people that are taking these pills, which don't know that they're not actually real pills, they're just sugar pills, right? The placebo. They're taking the placebo, but they don't know any better because these doctors are telling them that this is, you know, a real pill. It's been tried and tested, and it's definitely going to work if you follow the method in which I tell you how to take it. These people, for the most part, they heal. And in the past, scientists have dismissed the placebo effect. But for me, and for a lot of other people, and a lot of other scientists as well, that to me just proved the incredible power of the mind that we each have. Belief is key. If you believe that something is XYZ, then that's what it is for you. That's what happens. If you believe that you're going to be healed by XYZ, that's what's going to happen. And nocebo, on the other end of the spectrum, also works a treat because it all comes down to belief. So a nocebo is negative thinking, which then equals a negative result. So placebo is positive thinking equaling a positive result. Nocebo, negative thinking equaling a negative result. It all brings us back to belief. The primary principle of quantum physics is consciousness is creating our life experiences, and that the very mechanism is epigenetics. So epigenetics is epi coming from the Greek word meaning above or on top of. So on top of genes, genetics. Scientists like Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, you know, tell us that by using the mind, we can control our life. We can essentially control our life. We can create what happens in our lives. It doesn't, you know, like there was a long-standing belief that genes actually controlled what happened to us. You know, if there was a defective gene, then it meant that you were going to have that illness, whatever, you know, was in that particular gene that made it defective. But genes are just blueprints. You know, you don't blame the blueprint, you know, a dodgy blueprint of a house in the way that the house is built. Like you don't put the blueprint on the ground on the piece of land that the house is going to build and then expect the house to be built, you know, a day later or a week later or a month later. It's just a blueprint. So you can take that blueprint, but it's not set in stone. You can change the outcome of that gene merely by your thought. Now it's interesting that 95% of the time in the day-to-day, in your day-to-day, your subconscious is running the show. And unfortunately, 70% of the programs that are in the subconscious are self-sabotaging, negative, self-destructive programs. So this is where you come in. You bring in your consciousness. When you're present, when you are mindful, this is where you can create your life. This is where you manifest your desires. When you are aware of how powerful your subconscious is, yet you choose to remain and stay in the present. You choose to be mindful of what thoughts are coming up. You know, what's your automated sort of way of thinking on different things that happen to you during the day? You can change that. You have the power. I mean, the subconscious is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind is. But that's only because we are running on auto. And if we don't know any better, we allow the automatic programs to just run. But we can take control of that. And we're going to circle back around here a little bit. So it's really interesting because I'm sure you've heard of EEGs, right? Where they stick probes on your head. It stands for encephalograph, and it reads what your brain is doing at any moment, right? Now, what they have done now, scientists have done now, is they don't need to stick probes on your head anymore. There is now an MEG. It's a magnetoencephalograph. Encephalograph. I said it wrong previously. Doesn't matter. Now, the MEG, it actually has a probe which is not on you at all. It's actually outside of you. It's near you, but it's outside of you. And that can still read what your mind is doing at any moment. That's because thoughts are broadcast into the field, just like a radio broadcast. Now, the field is what Albert Einstein called the sole governing agency of the particle. And the particle is the material realm. It's actually the energy field that shapes the physical experience of our lives. So now that you know that your thoughts are actually projected outside of you, that's pretty powerful, right? You can imagine that person next to you could pick up on those. Now imagine if enough people had the same thought broadcasting out into the field. If enough people think the same positive or negative thoughts, these are what manifests. These are what create our reality. We are collectively creating reality with our thoughts. So when you think about that, and when you think about things like entanglement, where one particle is connected to another particle, doesn't matter how far away it is, and they're affected, and when you think about thoughts being broadcast outside of you, then you could, take a rough educated guess, even, with the really basic sort of knowledge that we have, that what we think not only creates our lives, but it can affect other people. If we're thinking something negative about somebody, that can affect them. And the opposite to that, if you are praying or thinking, you don't even have to call it prayer, because prayer has a certain connotation to it. And I understand that it may not be conducive to the way some people think about life, religion, whatever. If you're thinking a positive thing about something, if you're putting out there with your thoughts that you want this person to heal, you want this person to be happy, you want this person to be fruitful, you want this person to be healthy, I know that affects that person. I know because I've experienced that. I know because other people have experienced that. Now, it's interesting, like you could think, for example, that maybe you could just stop your thoughts altogether. Maybe you could just practice meditation and emptying out your mind completely and not thinking anything, not think good, not think bad. But think about this. When you plant roses, what do you get? You get roses, right? But if you plant nothing, you don't get nothing. For the most part, you get weeds. So wouldn't you rather try and, lift the energy, lift the vibrations? Because what we're talking about here is it's all vibration. Particles vibrate, energy vibrates, atoms vibrate, cells vibrate. The very fabric of reality comes from whatever reality is vibrating. So wouldn't you want to vibrate something of a positive nature into the ether? What do you have to lose? I tell you have so much more to gain than you have to lose. Let me see if I can get my train of thought back. You could maybe think, nah, this is all bullshit. I don't think me thinking positively about somebody healing, somebody getting healthy, getting better would do anything. I'm just going to stick with my subconscious programming. It's got me to where I am today, whatever. Or you could even think, I will continue to bitch about whoever in my head or be angry at this person in my head because they don't know that I'm doing it. But I'm telling you, like, you're actually cutting your nose off to spite your face when you do that, because things like epigenetics and quantum physics are telling us that the way that you think actually affects you and your physical body, depending on how you're thinking, in a positive or negative way. So if you're always angry, if you're always bitching about people, if you're always gossiping, if you're always bitter that somebody else has got more than you, if you're always thinking that you've got nothing, if you're always stressed, if you're always under the pump, if you're always consuming media that is negative in nature, if you're always full of fear because of said media that you're consuming, this affects you physically. This is where cancer comes from. This is where illness of so many different kinds of illnesses come from. I've actually got some stats here. Let me find them for you. So it's been shown from various sources that 75% to 98% of illnesses are a direct result of our thought life. The association between stress and disease is a colossal 85%. The International Agency for Research on Cancer and the World Health Organization has concluded, this is WHO, the WHO, that 80% of cancers are due to lifestyles and are not genetic. And this is actually a conservative number. And according to people like Dr. Bruce Lipton, gene disorders like Huntington's chorea, beta thalassemia, cystic fibrosis, just to name a few, affects less than 2% of the population. This means that the vast majority of the world population came into this world with genes that should enable them to live a happy and healthy life. Comes from the mind, people. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you haven't heard of this guy before, look him up. He's actually originally studied as a chiropractor, but then he damaged 6 vertebrae in his spine and couldn't walk. But what he did was, for 2 hours twice a day, he went within and began creating a picture of his intended result, a healthy, healed spine. So he would visualize this healthy, healed spine. And if his mind wandered to any extraneous thoughts, he would start from the beginning and do the whole scheme of imagery over again. He reasoned that the final picture had to be clear, unpolluted, and uninterrupted for this intelligence to take his condition to the next level. And guess what? He's a healthy man. He's a strong man. He's actually in his late 60s, if not 70s now. But he looks like in his, 50s. Like, he looks super young. He healed his spine with his mind. Medical organizations, or doctors that would go, oh, you're paralyzed from the waist down because you've damaged your L5. You're probably never going to walk again. Sorry, mate. This is the medical industry right now. This is what they tell you. It's very rare for somebody to tell you in a medical profession, the allopathic profession, that you can use your mind to heal yourself. But you can, my people. You can. You can heal yourself. You can help heal others. And it starts with the mind. Be aware of the things that you're thinking towards yourself, towards other people. They matter, pun intended, because there is no matter. It's all energy. And we have control over the energy in our lives, within ourselves, around us. Visualize the things that you want. Whether it's about you or it's about somebody else, visualize those things. Make them real in your head. And while you're visualizing, marry the emotion that having that thing fulfilled would make you feel. So when you pair the two together, when you're visualizing and you add the emotion together with that visualization, when you make that visualization as real as possible, how would it feel? How would it smell? How would it taste? What would you be doing? What's the emotion behind it? All that stuff, you bring that together, you can create it. You're bringing that energetic field into your reality. But the key is belief. If you don't believe what I'm saying, if you don't believe that this is possible, well, it's not going to work for you. So what have you got to lose? What have you got to lose? If you got any examples on how prayer has worked for you, or you've experienced this with other people, or how manifesting has worked for you, let me know. Get in contact. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. I do enjoy having a good old rant and going on tangents. Thank you for obliging me, and thank you for sticking around. And look, at the moment, due to all the interesting stuff that's happening in the world, I've lost some of my work and I can't get it back. And that's okay. I'm doing other stuff. But I do all this out of my own pocket. And I do it because I love it. And I do it because I know that I'm sharing valuable information that can help you. But I would like to ask for your help. I have a Patreon page where you can subscribe on a monthly basis. You can, help out with a few dollars every month, however much, from $10 to $50, or if you want to do a one-off donation, that's cool too. I would love your help because right now, I kind of would really appreciate it because I know the universe is always helping me, right? And it does, and I'm always fed and watered and clothed and shoed, and I've got a roof over my head. Thank you to a beautiful friend of mine. But yeah, if any of my work resonates with you, and even if it doesn't, if you can and you want to help me out, I would really appreciate it. So it's patreon.com/thefrequencydj, and you can pick a subscription amount that works for you. Otherwise, you can head over to my Instagram @thefrequencydj. The link in my bio, so the Linktree link, click on that and you can do a one-off donation as well. So I'm sending you so much fucking love, so much love. I am praying for you. I am thinking positive thoughts and throwing them right at you, my friend. I really hope that you're doing well. And I'd love to hear from you. Even if, you want to tell me that you liked or didn't like this particular episode, whatever. Or just tell me how your day's going. Thanks again, beautiful listener. I'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, you legend, to the Frequency DJ podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode and got something really meaningful out of it for you. If you did enjoy it and got something out of it, I would ask that you like, comment, and or share this episode so that others can get the benefits from this episode as well. And if you really loved it, I would humbly ask you to take one step further and go to my Patreon account, patreon.com/thefrequencydj, and subscribe to one of the membership tiers so that I can continue doing this work and share valuable information with you and people that care about what I am sharing. Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, sending you so much love, lots of light. See you next time.